start. Okay, let's start now. Very good afternoon to everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar on overcoming the fear of public speaking. This has been organized by the Young Professionals Society, and we had planned that this webinar will be given jointly by Rona Barber and also Professor Waqar Ahmed. Unfortunately, Professor Ahmed has some other commitment. However, Rona Barber is going to be giving this webinar herself. Just to give you a bit of background to the Young Professional Society, the Young Professional Society has been set up to help youngsters in the UK and elsewhere to help them with personal and professional development. And the focus of the Young Professional Society is in three areas. Number one is communication. Number two, innovation. And number three, leadership. And myself, Rona, and Professor Ahmed, and a number of other colleagues, and we've spent, the last few years, we've been running clubs to help youngsters with communication, become better public speakers. We've been running a lot of activities, speech competitions, writers club. We've also, there's been a number of webinars that have been given on innovation, people, scientists, academics, professional people who have been trying to get youngsters to learn about innovation, and then also leadership. So that's the focus of Young Professional Society. And we've done a number of webinars on communication, and this is another such webinar where it try to help people, youngsters and adults as well, on how to overcome the fear of public speaking, because this is a very big fear. And I know myself that I was very chronically shy. And it was only when I started my PhD that I had to go to an international conference and give my first maiden presentation on my work that, I knew how difficult it was, and I had to prepare. And so that was at the PhD. So what we want to do is we want to help youngsters at an early age, once they're at high school, that they can become more confident, become better communicators, and have a greater impact. So this is so people who would like to know more information. If you want to know more information about the Young Professional Society, we do have a web page, www.ypsociety.uk, and you can find out our activities, and we have regular blogs. And if you would like to become a member, it's a learned society. There's more information on that website. So you could become a young member or a professional member. And then also we have our social media, YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and WhatsApp. So you just to keep updated with what we're doing. And even this webinar, which is being recorded, we will upload on our YouTube channel so that you get an opportunity to see what's happened. So I think what we will do at this point now is I will just hand over to Rona Barber, who will take over and give her webinar, and then I'll be back later on at the end. And then hopefully, I think Rona will leave some time at the end for our participants to ask any questions that you may have on this fear of public speaking and how to overcome and become a better, confident public speaker. So Rona, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. This is something that I do quite frequently, because even if you are one of the people who are affected by this, you would still be shocked, I think, to realise the number of people that are affected by this. It's something like 82% of the British public who were asked the question, were you afraid of speaking in public? They put that as the highest fear, more than the fear of spiders or phobias like height or agoraphobia or anything like that. People are terrified to speak. So we need to ask ourselves, how does this come about? And in my experience, it has happened in a person's childhood. They've been put down by somebody. It happens quite frequently in the classroom, where the teacher will tell a young person that they've done something wrong, or even go so far as to call them stupid, which used to happen quite frequently. Not so much nowadays, I'm glad to say. But once you've been put down like that, it's very difficult to come back from it. And people often think that it's a confidence issue, but it's not a confidence issue, because I know people who have their own business and who are very successful business people, very successful entrepreneurs. Nothing wrong with their confidence, and yet they still cannot stand up and speak in public. And it's not even just about standing up in front of an audience and speaking in public. It's about speaking out in general. They have this fear that they're being judged and that they're not going to come up to the mark. And that's just simply not true. But telling somebody who's got that phobia, because it's very real, and I've known somebody to actually faint with fear at the thought of stepping onto the stage. He literally just passed out at my feet. He was so scared to stand up on that stage and speak in public. It took a few weeks to bring him back round again to actually do it, but he did, and now he's a very successful speaker. But it's a very difficult thing to overcome unless you know what caused it in the first place and how it managed to become so deep-rooted. Well, what happens with us as people in general is that we take on a lot of things from other people. We do this thing called the onion cloak, where every time we come across somebody, we have so many different personalities, you see. I mean, I'm not the same person with my children as I would be with my friends, and I'm not the same with my friends as I would be with my family, or in a professional sense, when I'm speaking to somebody in a professional sense. That's another cloak that I'm wearing. So what we have to do is find ourselves in amongst all of those cloaks. That's where we start. Then we go on to decide what's the difference between confidence and self-assurance, because self-assurance, as I said, is the thing that you need to start you off. Being self-assured means being comfortable with yourself. It means being able to look in the mirror and say, I like that person. It's being able to understand your own weaknesses, and it's being able to understand your own strengths. And it's knowing that you are that person who is afraid of public speaking. When you overcome that fear and you start to speak, it's not just about speaking in public, it's about speaking to everybody and anybody. If you're a father, for example, or a mother, you don't have any problem speaking to your children. You open your mouth and the words come out. You don't have any problem speaking to the grocer when you go to the shop. You don't have any problem speaking to the majority of people. Where you might come up against a problem is where you're speaking to somebody who's in authority, for want of a better description. Maybe a doctor or a lawyer or a policeman or somebody you're speaking to in terms of business. Then you might be a bit more reticent and frightened to say what you think and how you feel. Because again, it's this fear that you're being judged. So how I get people to overcome this? By creating their own character. And we'll look at the character that you are at the moment. So in my terminology, I would say, are you a cat? Are you a kitten or are you a tiger? So if you're a cat, you're perfectly able to communicate with the people you know and in a comfortable situation. If you're a kitten, then you're scared to open your mouth. You'll stand back and let everybody else do the talking. You'll want to say something, and then after the event, whatever it was, even if it was just a meeting in the street, you'll think, oh, I wish I had said such a thing. But you just can't find that, able to say the words. But if you're a tiger, then you're in control. You're the one who controls the conversation. And when I talk about controlling conversation, people don't always necessarily know what that means. What it means is that I decide how the person's going to take whatever it is that I'm saying. And I can make words, and everybody can do this. This is nothing to do with intelligence. It's got nothing to do with special skills. It's practice. That's all it is. It's becoming good at saying the words that you want to have an effect. First of all, it's by overcoming the fear in the first place. And that's so easy to do. Some people can't believe how simple it is until they've been through the process. Because the fear, although it's a phobia, is really quite ridiculous. Why should we be scared to open up our mouth and speak to people? We know we're perfectly capable. But that thing that's in there, that fear holds us back. And as I say, for some people, it's been there since childhood. So it's had a chance to take a real good grip. So I'll give you an example of how I can make people react in a specific way just by what I say. I really need to see people, and nobody's got their cameras on. Can I ask you please to put your cameras on? It's very strange talking to myself. I really need you to put your cameras on. Anybody? Everybody? You haven't switched them off, Dr. Ali, have you?
No, I'm not.
No.
Would you like this gallery mode or speaker view mode? Or
Gallery mode's fine so that I can see the people that I'm speaking to, because I need to see their reaction and they need to see mine, okay? So for example, I'm going to make a statement to you. It's an advert, actually. It's an advert in the paper, and it's just 6 words. And when you say these words, there's always a reaction, and it's quite extreme. And the 6 words are: baby's shoes for sale, never worn. So how does that make you feel? Would anybody like to give an answer to that just by way of raising their hand? Did that make you feel sad? Or did it make you feel that something pretty awful had happened? That's the reaction that normally gets. That's because that was the reaction I was looking for. If I use exactly the same 6 words and say, baby's shoes for sale, never worn, that's an entirely different message using the same 6 words. That is the power of language. It is the most powerful thing on earth. It can be used as a weapon. It can be used as a love token. It can be used as being the most powerful spokesperson in a company. It can be used in any way, shape, or form. The one thing that it is a science. People don't realize that communication, proper, excellent communication, is a science. It involves things like semantics and semiotics, but that's going a bit further down the road. We're not anywhere near that yet. But what we can learn today is that language is very, very powerful, and finding your voice is very important. It is life-changing. When you know what you want to say and you know how you want to say it, we won't be able to shut you up. You'll be going out there and you'll be giving it large to everybody, because once you become a confident speaker, you don't know how to stop. And you'll want to tell other people. You'll come across other people that you know would have a good message to give but don't know how to give it. You know, it's often when we look back in history and we look at the people who have been very successful, especially politicians, I used to say to my kids, just watch what's happening here with the politicians. And the one that we studied at that point was Tony Blair. I said, watch now. He's just come on the scene and he's absolutely full of it because he believes every word he's saying. So as he's speaking, he's looking directly at us. He's making eye contact with people. His hands are open, which show that he believes what he's saying. And over the weeks and months when we watched him, we saw the change, and it was so dramatic. I kept saying to myself, why can't other people see this? But of course, I know what I'm looking for when I'm looking at this. And I've taught my kids, to my regret, I have taught all of my children to be excellent communicators, which means that they can manipulate me, and they do it frequently. And sometimes I can see it coming, and I'm like, I'm being reeled in with this fish rod, and I'm like, no, no, no. So sometimes it becomes a battle of wills, who's going to win this speech war. But as we watched Tony Blair become a less confident politician because he'd started to not believe what he was saying, he started to realize this is a much bigger job than I thought it was. He started to be less confident, and it was obvious because his whole demeanor changed. If you look back at old footage, you'll see this. He stopped looking directly and leaning forward. He started to lean back. He stopped speaking with his hands open. He had them at his side. He stopped doing things that would let you see that somebody had belief in what they were saying. And that was his downfall. His downfall was going to happen anyway. But the minute he stopped believing in what he was saying, he wasn't able to convince other people. Again, if we look back in history, one of the examples I used to use when I was especially working with younger people, one of the examples I would use of a very powerful public speaker was Adolf Hitler. Because it started me giving an exercise of the youngsters to say, tell me what you think a really confident professional public speaker would look like. And they had this list of things that this person should be. And one of them, quite strangely, well, not really when you think of the age group that I was working with, was that they had to look good. They had to look good, they had to sound good, they had to have a powerful message, and all of these things, yeah. And when I told them the person that we were discussing or going to be discussing was Adolf Hitler, they were shocked. I said, well, think about it. He did not have an ounce of charisma. He was not well liked. He wasn't good looking. He wasn't personable. And he had a whole country behind him. They were marching and they were raising their hands in honor of, Sieg Heil Adolf Hitler. He was infallible. And the man was a crackpot who didn't have an ounce of personality, charisma, or anything else. But he was on a mission and he believed in that mission. He wanted to do something extreme. And to do that, he had to have people to help him. And how easy was it for him? We've seen it. It's incredible is what it is. And that was all down to the power of public speaking. Because if you had sat down and had a conversation with that man, he would have lasted 2 minutes and then you'd be gone. But it was staged public performance, which is a little bit different from what we're talking about now, is just the confidence to stand up and speak. Sometimes that confidence comes from, well, I say self-assuredness because I prefer that. Confidence is something, as I say, that I know lots of people who have lots of confidence, but they have very little self-assurance. You have to build on your self-assurance. You have to say to yourself, what am I good at? What can I do? Who's going to be convinced by me? If I stood up on a platform and gave a speech, who's going to want to listen to me? What have I got to say that's worth saying? And then you would discover that you've got quite a lot to offer. You've got quite a lot to say. And especially if you do have a message. I mean, a lot of people will want to come onto the public speaking course because it affects their job that they can't stand up and speak. They can't give a presentation, for example. They can, of course, they just don't think they can. So it starts with finding out which category you fall into. Are you the little kitten? Are you the cat? Or are you the tiger? And sometimes the tiger is a very forceful person who gets the job done when it comes to working in his company, for example. But ask him to speak in public and he can't do it. So just because you're a tiger doesn't mean to say that you're going to have the skills that are required for public speaking. Because they are skills, that's where it comes from. It's a skill, and skills are learned behavior. And if you are brought up by somebody who's quite confident and a public speaker, then you will be the same. And I've got a perfect example of that right here with Dr. Ali and his kids. His 3 kids now are all very confident public speakers because they know it's important and they've been taught that. And my kids are very confident public speakers. But if you're the kind of person who's in your own shadow, that's very difficult to get out of and break away from. And when we do this course, because the webinar today is only to introduce you to what can be done to overcome the fear of public speaking. The actual course, which will take you through and get rid of that fear of public speaking, is what we will talk about on that day. But for now, if you think about a particular situation where you felt in control and you were able to take the lead in a conversation, that's what you're looking to do. That's what you're looking to think back on and find that. And it would quite often come, might have been a time, just think of a time when you felt you were in control, whether that be talking to your own children, because that's important, because it's that feeling of being in control. You need to carry that forward to the next stage. It could be where you say you bought something from a shop, or you were taking your car back to the garage because it wasn't working properly or whatever. And just because of the anger that was driving you there, you know, no pun intended, but the anger that you felt because you wanted this garage to fix this problem, that would have put you in control. But it's not that kind of control you want. You want to have measured control. You want to go back to that garage and you want to say things like, there's a problem with the car, but you'll want to help with that, won't you? This is called leading language. And we understand, don't we, that it's in everybody's best interest, isn't it? Now, you would want to help with that, wouldn't you? So we start to learn about the power of using what we call impulse language. So we lead, just like I led you into thinking something dreadful had happened to that baby whose shoes were for sale, yeah? You can lead that conversation in so many different ways, and just by using different language, by using language that speaks to people. So if you, for example, it's quite difficult because I can't see you, this is really hard. If you have, just say you had a question now to put to me, what would I do in this situation, for example? So if somebody would like to give me a situation that they were in and didn't know how to overcome it, didn't know what to say to get their own way in this, whatever matter it was. So is there anybody who would like to put a question to me?
Either maybe they can unmute their mic and speak, or they can type in the chat box.
Hi, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that if you're in class and you have you're having a lesson and you feel like you want to contribute but you're quite self-conscious, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's exactly where we're coming from. Is it Julie? Yeah. Where you? That's the name that's on your board, so I don't know. If you want to say something and you don't feel able, what's holding you back is that fear. And if you understand that fear, is it because you think that somebody might think it's a foolish question, or you have to decide why it is that you can't say that. But let's just take that as an example. You think it's quite a silly question to ask, so you don't want to ask it. So you would say, whether it's a sir or a miss, we'll just say it was sir. Excuse me, sir, I want to ask you this question. I'm not sure whether you might think it's a bit silly. Then he should then encourage you to say, well, no, of course it's not. The only question that's silly is the one that's never asked. And that's a very common response to that. So I would say, in your position, start practicing. Start talking to yourself in your bedroom. You might think I'm loopy, but I did it for years. Start talking to yourself. Start talking to the mirror. Start feeling confident about what you're saying. Think about it. Write it down. If you're actually in the position where you're sat in a classroom and you don't feel capable of raising your hand to ask a question, that's not a good position to be in. You want to change that, and you want to change it fast. So jump right in there, jump into the deep end and say, sir, I don't know if this is a silly question, but, and then ask the question. Sir, I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, but you might, and then ask the question. There's no other way. There's no way forward. You can't take a shortcut with this one. This is why it's so important that you learn to do this, because there's no other way. You don't want to write a note and pass it to your teacher, do you? You have to be able to speak. So it takes a bit of practice, but you just have to do it. You just have to go ahead and speak. Yeah? Does that help, Julie?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So I see Rizvan's come on now. I don't know whether you got your message. Okay, anybody else got any questions for me on how they would like to have a response to what to do in a situation?
Someone's typed here in the chat box, forgetting the words.
Forgetting the words. Ah, yes, that's quite a common one. Just use other words. I'm a career storyteller, I don't know if you'll know that already, but I also work as a storyteller. And people found that amazing, that somebody could actually have a job telling stories. I got paid for that. It's my favorite thing to do in the whole world, but I love it. But when I started doing it, despite the fact that I've been telling stories for years, when I started doing it in public, sometimes I'd forget the words of the story. And then I realized, I don't know if the people will know what I was going to say anyway. Of course, they couldn't possibly. So I can use any words because they don't know what's coming. It's only me that knows. And that applies to you as well, Mimi, because if you want to say something and you forget the words, say that. Just say, oh, I forgot for a minute what I was going to say, or use another word. Just don't let the silence hang there, because that's agonizing, and that's what makes people become even more afraid to speak in public. When that happens, and it always happens, it happens to everybody, overcoming this fear is not a magic wand. I can't just go, you don't have that fear anymore. I can give you the strategies to deal with it. I can make it go away. In fact, it's not me who makes it go away, it's you who makes it go away. I will give you the strategies and you can use them. And you will become so much more capable and so fluent that the difference in your life is quite incredible. It's life-changing. I have lots of people who come back to me and say, this has been absolutely life-changing for me. I now not only am able to think, I'm able to speak, I'm able to say what it is. I've got another message in the chat here. What is the best way to prevent? Should you write out your public talk and memorize it? Yes and no. That's a difficult one. I don't tend to memorize things exactly, because that's where you'll find a stumbling block. If you write, it depends on the length of your speech as well, and the length of your talk. If it's a 5-minute talk, that's an awful lot to memorize. So what you do is you memorize the key points, and then you fill in the rest with your knowledge that you've already got. So for example, if your talk was about electric cars, which we've had quite a lot about recently, you know the 5 main points that you want to make about whether or not electric cars are better or worse than what we have now. And then you have quite a lot of information that you can infill. But having to memorize and, you know, then deliver a talk that's lasting even just 2 or 3 minutes is very difficult. It's much better that you practice just saying things in general, getting used to just talking and then filling in the bits that you don't know, because the person that you're giving the information to or that you're talking to doesn't know what you're going to say. They can't possibly know, oh, she's just forgotten her words because she said something else. So like I say, it's fluent is the key word. Be fluent. And if you forget what it is exactly that you were going to say, just say something else, or give yourself a minute to remember it and say, oh gosh, and there's nothing wrong with that. I still see professional public speakers doing things like that. Oh gosh, I've just forgotten that. Just give me a minute. That'll come back to me. What doesn't work is if you just stand there and say nothing. because then people know you've forgotten what you were going to say. And that would make people feel a little bit silly. So professional public speakers, you'll never see them doing that. You'll see them forgetting what they were going to say, but they'll say that. They'll say, oh, just for a minute there, I forgot what I was going to say. Just let me come back to that. And which we often do when we're asked a question we don't know the answer to. We'll say, don't know about that. Let me come back to you on that. I will come back to you. And then you carry on and say something else. So, but what is more important is that you have to find your own inner self first. You have to be the one who knows you inside out. So you have to start peeling away all those onion layers and find the person that's in there. Because one of the things that I discovered early on when I was doing this was that I can be several people in one day. I can be mum, I can be grandma, I can be wife, I can be teacher, I can be customer in the shop, I can be whatever. And every time I take on that cloak, I also take on a personality. So you have several personalities. You have the one that you show to your family, the one that you show to your friends, the one that you show to your teammates if you're playing football or whatever. You have your colleagues at work. You have all of these different personalities. And you have to find the one that's the real you. And that's the one you work on, because that's the one who has the fear. And it's an irrational fear. That's why they're called phobias. They are irrational, but nevertheless, it doesn't make them any less scary, and it doesn't make them easier to overcome. And the only way to overcome that fear is to meet it head on. I can do this. Of course I can do this. I have a voice, I have hands, and I have eyes, and that is all you need to be a confident public speaker. The rest of it is getting rid of all the baggage that you've been carrying about for years. Get rid of all of that.
Yes, Bruno, we have a few questions here.
Yeah.
We have somebody who's put their hand up as well. And
All
maybe
right.
we'll ask someone who's Umar to unmute yourself. You have a question, and then there's some in the chat box as well. So Umar, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I agree with Ronald. Yes, this is a journey, it's a training. I've been through this journey and I haven't completed my journey yet. I realized that I had this fear or phobia when I was probably around about 10, 11 years old. And my father, I remember in Pakistan, he actually gave me a letter to travel 10 miles in the bus and go to this magistrate court and give this to the judge. And it was so nerve-wracking that day, I thought I will never be able to achieve it. And because I've never done a big task like this before, I didn't know how to go to the court. How will I ask the person to let me into see the judge here? And because this person of authority, as you mentioned. And once I'd done it, it was so relieving. I thought it wasn't that hard. I'm glad that I've done that. I've achieved something. Another time I realized that I had to stand up in the mosque when everybody was sitting. I had to stand up to give the donation, put some money in the donation box, because the person wasn't coming around to us, and I had to go to the front to put the money there. And because my dad actually told me to stand up and do it, I realized my face was turning red, and I was like worried. I realized people are looking at me, and I realized I had these fears. And it was a journey that one day in my business, I achieved something, and somebody said to me, why don't you stand in front of the public and say just for 2 minutes? And I couldn't do it. My whole body was shaking.
Right.
I won't be able to speak. I'm just making a mockery of all this. And I realized what I did was, I know that there was a group of people standing on the stage. I will be amongst them. So I will stand on the stage for 2 minutes amongst them without even speaking. Just standing on the stage was part of my training, but I was looking head on to the audience, and I knew there was hundreds of people sitting there, and I was standing there looking at them. And this is how my journey started. First of all, you realize that you have got something and you need to overcome. And this takes those small steps at a time.
Yes.
Standing on the stage, looking at the audience was one thing. Second thing, when I spoke for 2 minutes, I thought it was like a 1 hour speech. Those 2 minutes were never ending. And now I can carry on talking for hours, and people say to me, "Shut up, Umar, you had enough now." Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So it's possible.
Yeah.
I would just like to encourage other people that I've been through this.
Yes.
I could not even speak for 2 minutes, and now I can. I'm
Yeah.
an entrepreneur. I'm an owner of my own business now. I'm not saying
Really.
I'm perfect.
No.
Yes,
But
but
Omar,
it's a
Omar,
journey,
how can I
ongoing
just
journey.
ask you? Can I just ask you how long did it take you to overcome that fear?
I would say it was good a year or so. Yeah, but as long as you realize and you have to create opportunities for
Yeah.
yourself. To, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to sit back and not take the opportunity. I'm going to take opportunity. I'm going to contribute. I'm going to overcome. It might be only 10 seconds. It might be 30 seconds. It might be 2 minutes. I'm going to stand on the stage. I'm just going to go and handshake with somebody who is a politician or whoever he is. I'm going to come back. Yeah. Just say hello to people who are in
Yes.
authority.
Yeah.
So it's various opportunities. Don't miss out on those opportunities. Yeah. You have to be self-motivated that you want to overcome it. You can't be forced by somebody keep on pushing you to go ahead
No.
and do it.
You have to want to do it. You're right, Abraham. You have to want to do it. And
Yeah.
wanting to do it is the beginning. That's the start. See what I mean? I've had to shut him up now because he's so good at public speaking.
Okay.
That's
Perfect.
right.
I think we have someone else, Rizwan, who's got his hand up. He's been waiting patiently. So Rizwan, you want to unmute your
Yeah,
mic and
I had a
hello.
question for Abraham, but we'll come back to that. Sorry. Hi there.
Can you
yeah,
hi
yeah,
there, yeah, it is one here. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I've just got a question. Yeah, it's very interesting, this whole discussion about public speaking. And I think one of the fears is, is being very self-conscious as to how you come across. And I think that can really grip you if you're public speaking and you're constantly fearing or thinking, how am I coming across to the audience or to the group of people I'm talking to, and that can suddenly cause all kinds of anxiety and issues when you're speaking. And I've had that at times, I feel. And you almost start to sort of, I mean, some of the symptoms might be you start to speak faster.
Yes.
So you're rambling a little bit. You might get butterflies inside you, and so there's a few things that then can start to happen. And it's good to sort of understand then the techniques, some kind of techniques or ideas as to what you can do to overcome that, because there's so many facets, aren't there, to public speaking. And I think that's one of them, is just how you're coming across to others. And I think everyone has their challenges when they're public speaking. So it'd be useful to know if there's any sort of ways to overcome that.
Yeah, there is, Rizwan. There's a whole lot of strategies that you can use, and one of the most famous ones, and it's talked about all the time in public speaking circles, is that if you think you're going to feel that way, and most people do at some point in their speech or talk or whatever, especially in the first 6 months or a year when they're doing that, is that they feel they're going to suddenly dry up. That's a big fear. They're going to suddenly stop talking. Their mouth goes dry. There are palpitations in their heart, all of that thing. And they say, think of the person that you dislike most in the world in a horrible situation. Or think of the Queen sitting eating her breakfast with no clothes on, or something equally ridiculous. Just have that picture in your head. And every time you get into that situation, just bring that image to your mind and it will make you smile. And the minute you smile, it comes back. It's an automatic thing. I don't know how that works because that's something to do with the brain coming into play here. But if you are in that situation and you do that and you think of that thing that makes you laugh, then it suddenly comes back. But again, there's the other thing of saying, oh gosh, I just forgot where I was for a minute. Don't have a fear of doing that because that's perfectly normal. And even I've done it myself quite recently, actually. I've held my hand up and said, oh, hold on a minute. I don't know where I was up to with that. Just give me a minute. And then I'm right back in there. But I've been public speaking for most of my life, to be honest. But even yet, there's still sometimes when something will happen to distract you or whatever. But the single biggest factor of this is initially, once you have lost that real fear, it never comes back. The fear of a next little hiccup or the next little hiccup will be there. But once you've got over the initial fear and you know you can do it, it just gets easier. And then it gets so easy that you think you've got nothing else to learn. Well, that's a wake-up call, because I'm still learning. There are things happening all the time that, you know, change circumstances. What it's all about now is doing this electronically. This is really weird for me, because I'm used to being in the room with people.
Yeah.
They're seeing my presence, which is quite, you know, big. I don't mean big in terms of size. I mean, quite a powerful presence, because I work on that. You can't convince people that they can do something unless you show them that you can do it yourself. So I could be put in front of any firing line. I have never come across a situation in the last umpteen years that I could not fix with words. They are so powerful. And the use of words in the right place at the right time. And for the young people now who are coming up to stages where going for interviews and things like this, it's not just about what you say. It's about how you look. It's about how you present yourself. But that applies in every way. If you feel good, you'll feel more self-assured. Self-assurance. Can you put that slide up for me, please, now, Nasser?
Thank you. Just,
because this is again overcoming the misnomer, if you like, that it's all about confidence, because it's not. It's about self-assurance. Confidence is something that comes once you've got good at something and you get better. Then you become more confident. But at the beginning, in the start, it's your self-assurance. It's knowing yourself. It's knowing what your foibles are. What are the little things that really affect you? What is it that's really stopping you from moving forward? And then once you've got yourself assured, that's where self-assurance comes from, is that you are sure of yourself. You know your capabilities. You know you can talk. You know you can be convincing when you want to be. You've done it thousands of times, but you've only done it with friends and family and people who know you. That's the big step, is doing it with people you know, and then taking that, what you do know now, forward and using it in a different setting. That's all it is. You don't suddenly grow a new voice. You know, you don't suddenly, you know, you're still the same you. You just have to make that transition between who you are and who you want to be. But it's the same person with the same skills, the same everything, same haircut, same face, you know. You just have to understand what it is that's holding you back and shake it off. And what it is that's holding you back is usually something that happened in your childhood. Why are we still holding on to that? Get rid of it. I am perfectly capable of doing this. Why am I letting what a teacher said to me 25 years ago affect me? And it has affected me for the last 20 years of my life. You shake it off. You find out what that little thing is. And I have to tell you, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes it happens so far back, or you've regressed it and you don't want to remember it. But all you have to know is it was something that happened back then, and it doesn't matter now. What matters now is that you can pick up from here and start to be a confident public speaker. There are no special skills attached to that, believe you me. It doesn't matter what you want to talk about. You can talk about how matchsticks are made. You can talk about how sneakers are made. You can talk about what makes people choose one color as opposed to another when they're picking a new dress or new curtains. You can talk about anything. Conversation. The words don't matter. It's the feelings behind them that do. And when we get to that stage, we can move on. So we go from self-assurance to creating that confidence. And once you've got that confidence, you get a feeling of being in control. Once you're in control, that supports the feelings of the most innermost confidence, where I can do this. Of course I can do it. I'm in control of myself. Nobody can stop me from speaking. And this results in a feeling of ease. And that is where you want to reach. You want to reach that feeling of feeling easy, feeling comfortable. Because once you have that feeling of comfort, it's from that point on that you'll be able to engage in conversation at any level, communication at any level. I used to take my students into a hotel where I knew that there was some sort of thing going on, some meeting or whatever, full of total strangers. And I used to make them go up and introduce themselves to somebody, and they would be like, oh no, I can't do that. Oh no, I can't do that. I have to have a reason. Exactly. So what's the reason? And you just think of something that you're going to say to these people. And they would be terrified. But see, the first time they'd done it, they would come away and their chest was expanded and they were walking straighter because they felt as if they had just overcome the most gigantic hurdle you could ever imagine. They've done it. They've broken the fear. They've spoken to a total stranger. And then you just go on from there. But one of the things we would normally do, I would normally do this in a physical sense, in a room where I could see the people, and then I would split them into twos. And I would get them to speak to each other. Total strangers, sit down, tell yourselves about each other. Tell yourself a little story that happened to you on the way here or whatever. But we can't do that on a Zoom scenario. But in the when we do the course, we will have breakout rooms and we will do something similar where people will be able to speak to a stranger. Wow. What about that then? Imagine speaking to a stranger. So yes, it's exciting stuff, believe you me. And as Abraham said, I don't know where he's going now because I can't see him, but once you have overcome that, the world's your oyster. He's a very successful man now. Probably never would have been if he hadn't found the courage to do that one thing that his father asked him to do and that terrified him. My saying is, feel the fear and do it anyway, because the fear disappears. Okay. I've got a message on here from Rizvan to ask about the details of the course, but we'll tell you that at the end, Rizvan.
We have
Okay.
a few other questions as well, Rona, but maybe if you can...
Can't see, can you take the slide off because I can't see the chat? Thank you.
I can read. Sure. I think one of them you might have answered already about with during a speech. If someone gets off track in conversation, lost when one started from and seemed to recall, then what is the best way to deal with? I think you did sort of answer that. Then there was one on how should you copy a role model speaker or be yourself?
Always be yourself. Always be yourself. You can emulate what that person does. In other words, if you like somebody's particular style, you can create your own version of that. The problem with copying somebody else is it's not you. And the secret to being successful at what we are talking about now is that it is coming from you. It's got to be you. It's got to be yourself thinking what you're thinking and putting it out there, speaking from you in here, not copying somebody else. You know, I told you I was a storyteller, and I have been around storytellers all my life. I'm born into a dynasty of storytellers. And one of the things that I see a lot of young storytellers doing now, because by the way, that's an excellent profession to take up, depending on what the storytelling is, of course. But if you were selling something, for example, I've noticed a lot of storytellers now see a storyteller, they like their style, so they copy it. And they are never as successful as they could be if they had their own style, because they've just become a replica of that other person. And that's what the people see when they see her. They think, oh, she's just another Jeannie Brown or whoever, yeah? Instead of having her own individual style. One of the things that holds people back is not being able to show themselves. But that's exactly what you want to do. I've had a message here from somebody asking about when housewives or women who generally spend a lot of their time at home and haven't had the opportunity or, you know, don't feel confidence because they're not equipped with certain knowledge or things like that. And how would they get this self-assurance? Well, can I tell you, one of the hardest jobs to do in the whole entire planet is to be a mum, without a shadow of a doubt. You are instilling values and principles all the time in your children. So you are an excellent communicator, because you couldn't do that job if you weren't. And you're all managing. One of the things I admire about Asian population is their ability to be like that with their family, because family is so important to them. And that's why I think that you're having a fear of taking that out there into the public, this display of, you know, managing things. You know, when you think about it, as a mother and a housewife, you're doing, you know, two jobs. You're doing two very difficult jobs. And you'll quite often go head to head with your children. Who's going to win that battle? Hopefully you. But that's where using the power of words comes in, and the words that you use. So yes, hopefully you'll come on the course and you'll learn a lot more, because this is just quite a short time, and there's not a lot of opportunity to tell you the absolute mass of information that's available to you, and the little quirks that you can use to overcome those fears. And again, the first one is about knowing yourself. So between now, and those of you who want to come on the course, between now and then, think about that. Think about, what would I change about myself to make me feel more confident and more able? And it won't be a lot. It won't be a lot. It'll just be a case of thinking, why am I afraid? If you remember what it was that caused you to start feeling that fear, that's where you would start your journey, is to put that behind you. If you don't, then my advice is create one. Create a scenario in your head where somebody said to you, I don't want to hear what you've got to say, because you don't know what you're talking about. If you were only 9 or 10 years old, that is devastating to hear something like that. So if you can't imagine what actually happened to make you have that fear of public speaking, then invent something, because you need that barrier to overcome. So when you've overcome that barrier, you move on to the next stage of gaining the self-assurance, and then the confidence, and then knowing that you can do this. And there are some fantastic speakers clubs around. Dr. Nasser Ali and myself have been a member of a club in Altrincham for many, many, many years, but they don't actually teach you how to be a professional public speaker. That's somewhere you go along and show off once you become a good public speaker. You learn the skills and then you go and show off. So
we've also been holding these for the last year and a half, 2 years or so, these Young Speakers Club,
yes.
Which have been very, very effective. Youngsters have been given the opportunity to learn about good communication. And we've had special sessions on like TED Talks, where the youngsters have given TED Talks within our club and that. So it's been, so we will be restarting these again, the Young Professional Society, in September. We just finished off in first week of August, where throughout the lockdown, every week we used to have these sessions, Speakers Club. And we just had a kind of a 1 month break, and hopefully in September we'll be starting again these clubs, and the youngsters are all welcome to join.
So just as Dr. Ali's saying there, if you think of yourself now, those adults amongst you who are here in this group now, if I can say to you, some of these young people we were working with were as young as 11 and 13 years old. There was one particular girl who was 13 years old. And when she first came to our group at the hotel, she couldn't even get up off the chair and introduce herself. She was so shy. And 10 weeks later, was it? She was up there picking up the prize for being the most improved and providing the best speech. And you couldn't hold her back. She was fighting to get to the front now. And that's what happens. You gain this confidence all of a sudden, and you think you can take on the world. And you can, believe you me. If you're a good communicator, you can do anything. But see, if you want to do something and you're particularly good at it, but you can't communicate that, that's a barrier. So if you want to be a surveyor, for example, and you've got a talent, or an architect, or a doctor, or a lawyer, and you've got a will and a talent and the ability and the brains to be that, but when it comes to the time when you've got to stand up there and make a good account of yourself, you can't do it. All of the rest of that might as well not exist, because what you need is to be able to convince people that you can do that, that you are that person, that you are able, and that you're confident enough to take on anything that comes your way. Because I'm in my own family, my daughter's husband, so clever, so bright. He also went to Oxford, and he was just amazing. Give him any task, he could do it, except stand up and speak in front of people, or even go for an interview. Hopeless.
And
because he had never had the opportunity. He was an only child. He never got an opportunity to speak to other people very often. He was always had his head in a book, you know, and then he went to university, and then he went on to further education, and then blah, 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 and never actually learned to communicate particularly well.
And it's
Now,
so
there's no holding him back. Sorry.
And it's so important, the communication skills, these soft skills, that even the youngsters now, because the youngsters are getting very, very bright now. You've got these clever kids who are coming out, leaving college or sixth form with A stars in their A levels. And then they want to go on to study degrees like medicine, dentistry, and that. And then they have to go through an interview, or they have to sit an interview. And that's where the university decides, because everyone who applies for these degrees must have A stars in their A levels. So how they should select the best one is these soft skills, you know, the communication skills. So if you don't do well in your interviews at university for, say, medicine or dentistry, then you might not get an opportunity to study medicine in a UK university. And sometimes what happens is some of these youngsters have to go to Europe, in Bulgaria or these kind of countries, so that they can study their dentistry and their medicine. And that's all because, you know, they didn't have these soft skills. And that's one of the reasons why this Young Professional Society we set up, to try to help youngsters improve and become good at these soft skills. Because if you have the hard skills and the soft skills, then inevitably you're going to succeed. Maybe Professor Amit could come in here. I've seen he's just joined us now to just talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so I think in terms of public speaking or speaking in front of a group of people, no matter what profession you get into, it doesn't have to be university interviews. If you work for a company or you work for any organization, to get a job in the first place, you have to, you know, give an interview, and it's important that you can speak confidently and communicate your points across. And then even when you get that job, in order to move up the ladder or to progress, you'll have more interviews coming up. So even within internal promotions, you have to have an interview, and then very often you'll get asked, you might talk to your manager and say, oh, I've got a great idea for this particular product. Yeah, we should do this, we should do that. His or her response might be, well, come and give a presentation to the board, and let's see if the company wants to go ahead with that or not. So in every phase of your life, every career, you have to learn this ability to speak in front of a group or in front of a public. So even in privately, you might have a wedding, or you might have some event going on, and you're asked to say a few words. So it's very critical for you to be able to master this skill if you want to succeed in life in general.
Okay, Rona, do you want to say something, or should I just show one or two slides about the course? Or
No, just to agree actually with what Professor Ahmed has just said. The soft skills are absolutely vital, and that's what this course is all about. It's about attaining those soft skills that you need, along with all your university, you know, credits, whatever else you're going to have to put you in good stead to get into that university, your course results, all of that. Because as you say, everybody applying for those courses is going to have the same academic qualifications. You need to stand out from the rest.
Yep. Okay, let me...
Yeah.
So can everyone see this?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so as Rona mentioned, that we have a one-day course. I mean, we've done several of these webinars now, and we've been doing these Speakers Club for about 2 years now. We felt that this is the time now where we need to introduce a one-day course on overcoming the fear of public speaking. And just to give you some details on this, so as I said, it's a one-day course. This course will run on Sunday, the 6th of September. So there's a few weeks left, and it's from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, and there's a half an hour break, and then from 12:30 to 3:30. The cost of the course, this is a special offer, is £69. Normally it would be like £99, but we're sort of introducing the course. It's at £69. Registration is required, and we have a limited number of people who could sit on this course. So it's first come, first served basis. And because we're still technically in lockdown, this will be a virtual course where we will be running using the Zoom platform. And I'm sure everybody is quite familiar with this, and it works quite well, the Zoom platform. And this will be run by, the course tutor is our own Rona Barber, who is a professional public speaking coach. She's actually CPD accredited university tutor. And as she mentioned in her webinar, she's been a career storyteller for the last 3 decades. So she has a wealth of experience in good, effective communication and tutoring and mentoring people in how to become. And I believe she's also given a TED talk as well on effective communication. So who is the course for and how to register? This course is for people at the age of 18 or above. So it's not for young children, 11, 12, 13 years old. We will put something together for the younger members as well. But I think this particular one is for 18 or above. So if you're below under 18, you know, it's not for you. And we've created a form which I've sent a link in the chat box as well, where you can click this link. You could fill a form, a very basic, 3-4 questions. It should take you a few seconds. So if you can click that form, and as I said, because it's first come, first served basis, we are going to take those people who register first. And if you want a bit more details about the course, or even what we do at the Young Professionals Society, you can just send us an email here. It's info@ypsociety.uk. And what the course attendees will get is, obviously, after completion, they will get a certificate, and also any of this course material and the handouts that Rona will be going through. So these are some of the details on the course. And as I said, the link is there for the registration. So please feel free to fill that form in and submit that. And as soon as we get your responses, we'll be in touch with you to give you more details. So it is actually the 6th of September, a day's course, one-day course on public speaking, how to overcome the fear of public speaking. Because there's a lot that Rona can communicate and inform you, and you could take a lot of benefit. And even when I was a PhD student and I had to give my first talk, it was quite difficult. I think that, I think it was this is where I started to learn at that level, in university, at the PhD level, how to become, do public speaking and gain confidence. And I think it's important that, and it's a lot, not just with the youngsters, but the adults as well. As Rona mentioned, you could have a degree from Oxford, but struggle with public speaking. So yes, it's very, very useful, and I'm sure all of you will look forward to hearing from you, and Rona will be Yeah, I'm sure she will be enjoying teaching you all. And yes, I'll pass over to Rona.
Thank you. Yes, I did say at the beginning, overcoming the fear of public speaking is absolutely life-changing. And it's life-changing in so many ways, but in particular, that you become the you that you can be, and not the person who's been hiding under that onion cloak for years. You can come out and be the real person that you are. And the difference is absolutely incredible. I still get postcards and things from people that came on my public speaking courses like 20 years ago, giving me updates on how their life's going. And I know these things are life-changing. So please take the opportunity. For a few hours, it can change your life.
Okay. Yeah, so do we have any other questions, or anybody wants to ask about what Rona's been speaking about in this webinar on how to overcome the fear of public speaking? And if you want to know anything or ask a question about this course, what's involved, or please feel free. You could either unmute your mic and ask a question, or you could type in the chat box. No?
I think maybe.
No? Do we have any? No?
There's quite a few things written in the chat box, but I think most of it is things that we've covered.
Yeah.
I think one of the ones that was asked a couple of times was, can they negotiate with teachers about their grades, and their A levels and things? That's maybe for some of the younger ones. Yes, you can negotiate anything. Once you've got those negotiation skills, you can negotiate your way in and out of anything. Power of public speaking is incredible. And it's not just public speaking. It's not about standing up on a stage. It's about making a difference to your own life, because you're able to open your mouth and say what it is you feel, and say it to people, strangers, anybody. You should be able to communicate well. It's a gift.
So Ronald, someone's asked, is there a list of topics that will be covered in the one-day course?
Yeah, when they register for the course, they'll see that. They'll see on the registration that the main topics will be. I can't get into mine just now because dead. I can't.
Yeah. Well, I think what you can do is, if you can send an email to that email that I've given in the chat box, we can respond to that and send you more details on the topics.
Yeah. Yeah. The yeah, more or less the people asking the same question, and the things that are covered in the course basically are going through the stages of overcoming, which I've said before, discovering where you are in that, mishmash of people who have this fear, because it covers an enormous amount of people, and people from all backgrounds, and people who are doing all sorts of jobs already, and who feel that they're being held back because they can't speak up in public. So it's about, first of all, identifying where you are on that graph. Are you the kitten, are you the cat, or are you the tiger? Because sometimes you might be the tiger, but you might be the scary one. So, we uncover, we dig deep into what it is that's caused this fear, and then we show you how to get rid of it, how to overcome it, and it never comes back. It's like riding a bicycle, you never forget.
Rono, we have another question from Mahmoud. I believe Mahmoud is from USA, from Florida. And he's asked that if someone is not a native English speaker and he's speaking, if someone asks about the language problem when you speak, how can you deal with it? If somebody has a bit of language issues, or?
Well, I would like to think that if you were speaking to somebody in your own mother tongue, and it was different from the person that you were speaking to, normally people would make an allowance for that, surely. But if you're asking how can you improve your communication, Well, a lot of that comes down to, depending on the circumstance, was it something, say for example, you were going for an interview and you felt that that was going to be an issue and going to cause you a problem because English wasn't your first language, or, you know, Urdu wasn't your first language or whatever, then you would have to do a little bit of planning beforehand. If you come into a situation like that face to face, well, you just have to handle it at the time, and we covered that. But there's always a lot to be said for, if you know you're going to be doing something, plan it first and just think, how am I going to get this across? And surely the person will see that and will know that you don't have the same mother tongue, and that you can communicate quite effectively. As long as you can speak some of the language, you shouldn't really have a problem.
Okay, thank you. I think we should wrap up there now. It's 3:15.
Yes. Yeah.
We've gone over the hour. So thank you very much for joining us today on this webinar, very important topic. And we look forward to hearing from you. Those of you who are interested, please do fill that form in, and we look forward to seeing you 6th of September. Thank you very much. Have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you.